Good evening, everyone. Welcome to an unscheduled special edition of SAFC Fan TV Live. We've got a full house and still got more to join us as well this evening. So I'll just quickly kick off with, we've got 70 people watching already. In the comments, we've got Colin Major, Las Palmas Mackham, Rusty Mackham, Conrad, Susan Beaumont, L12 Bong, Paul Armstrong, Sexy Ian, and Chris Johnson and David Joblin. That's all. Hello to all. I'll pre-warn you, we expect quite a few. We're at 105 already, so I will try and pick out comments that I see to read out. If you're a member or you can do a super chat, even better. But if not, if I miss you, I apologise in advance. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll start with Jack, because me and Ems have kind of had our say a bit already earlier on. So, Jack, the news today. What was your first thoughts as soon as you heard this?
I was a very happy gentleman, as I've criticised him quite a lot on the Thursday night shows. I think it's the right decision. It was the wrong decision to appoint him in the first place, and at least the board and the ownership have sort of been big enough to hold their hands up and admit that there's been a mistake made. From the outset, it just didn't sit right, did it? He wasn't saying the right things, but more importantly, the results were fairly average to poor. The performances were pretty dire, let's be honest. We haven't played well at all, really, under him. I can't think of a single Sunderland player that he's really improved since he's come in. And you just got the feeling it wasn't the right fit. We all realised that Tony Mowbray had a few bad results towards the end of his spell, but I think the ideology behind it was that we get rid of Mowbray and bring somebody in that's younger and fits the model, and they had a target in mind. And it screams out to me that 2 or 3 managers had turned them down, and suddenly they were a couple of weeks in and they've appointed Beal as a bit of a panicked decision, and it just didn't really work out whatsoever. So yeah, I'm pleased he's gone. The only positive is that they've sort of held their hands up and says, look, we hold our hands up, we've made a mistake here. I'm okay with Dodds until the end of the season. And it gives us sort of 3 or 4 months now to plan for a very big appointment to take us into next season. So yeah, I'm not happy he's had poor results, because I wanted him to have success, but I'm pleased he's gone because it just wasn't working.
Yeah, is this a complete blip, the fact that they've done this, because they could have just gone with Dodds in the first place and ran it on? Or do you think they should have kept Mowbray till they had somebody literally in line?
Yeah, well, I think that was what we were all thinking, weren't we? The fact that Mowbray had gone, they must have a number 1 target lined up, and then suddenly it took them best part of 2 weeks to appoint the manager. There was the Will Still link, which I know we're probably going to come on to later in the show. What happened with him, I don't know. Whether it was offered to him and he turned it down, or whether or not we wouldn't pay the compensation package. There was maybe another man in mind that didn't come to fruition, and suddenly it was like we were 2 weeks down the line and we're scrambling around for options, and we ended up with somebody that wasn't really doing that well and didn't really seem like a fit for our football club. So yeah, if you'd given me the choice before December, before he was appointed, would you rather go with Dodds till the end of the season and wait until the man that you want becomes available potentially, or go with Michael Beal? I would have picked Dodds till the end of the season, because I thought he did okay in the 3 games that he managed, 2 wins and a loss. So yeah, it was just a strange one all round. But like I say, the only positive is that it wasn't working, and they've realised that they've been big enough to admit the mistake. And yeah, we'll see what happens in the summer.
Yeah, just got a super chat in there from Mad Mac, and been a member for 30 months. He says, welcome back on the merry-go-round. Let's go. That's what it feels like with Sunderland all the time. Jacob, we'll come to you next. I just want to mention before we come to you, I'm sure all the panel members will agree with me that we all wish Tony Mowbray a speedy recovery for his current medical issues. It's a shame he's had to step back from Birmingham. And we hope he gets a fast recovery and is back in the game soon. Jacob, when you heard the news, where were you? When did you hear the news? And when did you realise it wasn't just talk?
Well, a lot of alarm bells were ringing last night when you put that video up, Mike, to be honest. But I'm pleased for you, to be honest. I mean, if it turned out he wasn't sacked, I think we would have received a bit of a battering on the socials. But at the same time, it was a reliable source at the end of the day, and it's proved to be right once again. It's a source that's been right about a few things over the years from this particular person we know, and once again they've been proved it's obviously been proved right for something they've leaked to us once again, which was Michael Beale's departure. At the time, I was on a break at work when I find out he'd actually been sacked before that, but I went to go and check my phone on my lunch, and yeah, a bit like what Jack said, a sigh of relief, but at the same time, a complete and utter shock as well. I mean, it must have been a real tragic state behind the scenes for the club to make a decision like that. But then again, if you assess the performances as a whole, we've gone backwards as a team compared to what we were when Mowbray was here. The performances on the pitch have simply not been good enough, particularly away from home. It's something that we've needed to address. Even back in the Tony Mowbray days, it wasn't as good then, but it's the performances which have been alarming, particularly the last two, which if you look at the so-called talent we're meant to have in the squad and compare that with the performances that we had under Mowbray, it's a massive step back as far as I'm concerned. And Jack is 100% right what he said. It was a panic in the first place when we got him. I mean, the excuses for why we couldn't get the other candidates that were linked with the job at the time is because the apparent reason they wanted to bring their own staff with them, and we weren't prepared to do that. But then again, we didn't really give enough credit to the job that Dodds done in the 3 games, and I think they should have looked at that as a short-term option at the time after sacking Tony, and then reassess and look more longer term next summer for a manager to come in then. But the club looks like they've held their hands up. It has been a mistake in the appointment they've made, and for me, appointing Dodds to the end of the season is the right decision, and we go again in the summer, but it has to be the correct man in the dugout this time, considering a lot of the mistakes that the club have made off the pitch at this moment, and also on it at this moment in time.
Yeah. Terry, have you finished celebrating, or have you started celebrating yet? What's your thoughts? I know your thoughts are going to be jubilant, but what's your thoughts? Is this too little too late? Are we still going to make the playoffs?
Well, to be fair, it's 9 weeks too late, isn't it? Let's face it, he shouldn't have been appointed in the first place, like Jack said, and obviously Jacob's in the same boat as well. The majority of Sunderland fans were underwhelmed by the appointment in the first place. I mean, we should have really, in hindsight, kept Tony Mowbray at the end of the season, see what he could have done. If Speakman and KLD had just adjusted the model a little bit, when Tony raised his concerns, if they sort of backed him, got an experienced striker in, or whatever he wanted to get in, a bit of experience with these kids, then I think we'd be in a better position right now. But of course, all the experience Tony Mowbray has obviously means nothing to Christian Speakman and KLD at this moment in time. But yeah, I'm pleased Beale's gone. It just means now we start all over again, don't we? And I'm happy. I mean, you never see anybody get sacked, and I've got nothing against him personally in his own, in his own life. Wish him all the best. But as a Sunderland coach, it wasn't the fit. It wasn't the right fit. We all know it was an underwhelming sort of an appointment, and I think it probably would have been about 4th or 5th choice, to be fair. Let's face it. I think under this current model, not many coaches are really going to come and sort of take control of Sunderland unless they haven't got much else on the plate, have they? So they're going to have to really have a long, hard look in the mirror at themselves, especially KLD. I mean, he employs Speakman. He gives Speakman the cash to spend, and Speakman does what he wants with it. So I think, if we're not going to be in the same boat in 12 months' time, something drastically has to change. Otherwise, we're coming back to square one again.
Yeah, definitely. Quickly in the comments, we've got 207 people watching. That's amazing. Thank you, guys. If you can all hit thumbs up, it would be much appreciated. Mike Cassup says, that's 3 managers in one season. Generally speaking, that's not good for the club. Generally spells doom, states. Shows clubs like this spell relegation battle. I don't think we're quite there yet. Mickey Mack says, we've just had Beal sacked. What about Mike? Sick of the sight of him on here. Well, I'm still understudy for Wayne. When he comes back, I'll hide back in my corner. Chris Spencer, Speakman has to be on thin ice now. How much has Beal cost us in Compo? How much would it have cost us to get first choice target? Absolute mess. So, Ems, you joined me when the news was breaking initially, and we did a quick 10-minute live to kind of promote this one. Obviously, you're really upset because you've always sung Beale's praises. Can you just explain to us how you're feeling?
Yeah, I was absolutely devastated, Mike, as you could see. But no, I mean, honestly, it's one of the best things Sunderland's done this season. It's one of the best things that board has done this season is getting rid of him. It actually makes me wonder, though, all these pictures on Saturday floating around on social media, if I'm on this flight back to Scotland, had he been sacked then? And it just hadn't come out. So it makes me wonder when he's actually been sacked, because obviously we got the rumours yesterday. The source come to us and said yesterday. So it's making me wonder, when has he getting sacked? But like I said, it's one of the best things that Sunderland AFC have done this season.
Emma, do you think he's been sacked or resigned?
I think he's, to be personally honest, I think he's actually resigned. I don't think that the board has got the balls, if you like, to sack him and admit that they're wrong. I think it's more potentially a mutual sort of thing that he said, no, look, it's just not working out for me. Because I think what happened with Hume on Saturday and the backlash he's had off the fans to do with that, I think that's been a lot of the decision making that's happened with Beal.
Do you think he's gone back to his family and had a conversation with his family and then had a talk about it?
Well, all footballers and managers, they talk to their families about moving on and things like that, don't they? So you would presume that he has.
Yeah, definitely. Jacob, you want in?
See, I disagree. This reminds me a lot of the Paolo Di Canio sacking back in 2013, where the players went to the board and simply said that we can't work under this guy. Something's clicked at full time at St Andrews at the weekend, following the Trey Hume incident where he got subbed off, thinking this simply can't work. You know, the relationship's completely broken down. This guy's not giving us enough. I mean, it's not excusable from a player's point of view, really, but at the same time, there could be more to it. With the players going to the board saying we simply just can't work and play for this guy due to other things that have gone on behind the scenes. Obviously, they won't reveal the full extent. I mean, if you click the link on the club's Twitter page right now, it goes to an error. So clearly they're still, I would say, editing the full statement that's going to be put out, but they won't reveal the full extent of it. No way.
They've probably crashed the system. They've been inundated with thank you messages. The statement, I think, that they actually put out, which was about appointing Dodds, was very vague in comparison to when we lost managers in the past. That's why it feels like it was very shotgun. Jack, I believe you've got the statement. You can read it out for us there.
Yeah. So it doesn't. Normally, the headline is like sort of removal of the previous manager, isn't it? It's like parted company with so and so, contract terminated, etc., etc. This one, It goes on more so that the headline is Sunderland AFC has appointed Mike Dodds as the club's interim head coach. Dodds will lead the first team until the end of the season and replace Michael Beal. And then all it says is who departs the stadium light with immediate effect. So it's not really going along the lines of we've got rid of him and you know, it's gone with the line, you know, Mike Dodds is there, and it's sort of a bit cloak and daggers, as Terry says. But to be fair, the one bit of the statement I do like is that Speakman says, disappointed that Mike is leaving Sunderland. Our desire is to improve, and unfortunately that hasn't been evident. As such, we take full accountability and feel that acting decisively is in the best interests of the club. It's been a difficult few months for Michael, who leaves with our best wishes for the future. Our focus is now on the players and supporting Dodds in the remaining games to ensure we achieve the highest possible league finish. We'll be updating our supporters further as and when significant developments are made. So it's not the most sort of cutthroat or decisive of messages, but it sort of says what it says. But I think the main thing from that I'm taking is that they're holding the hands up and saying, you know, look, we appreciate it hasn't gone to plan. He was the target, 10, 12 games ago, whatever it is. He's not now. And we're using this sort of next 2 or 3 months to look at who the long-term manager is. And in the meantime, Mike Dodds it's in his capable hands. So it's a bit of a trial period for him, because the issue we're going to have is if he does well, you know what our fans are like. They're going to want him to take it on from next season, and whether or not that's right for him or not, I don't know. Personally, I wouldn't like him to take it on permanently, because I don't think it would be right for the role. But as long as we give a good account of ourselves between now and the end of the season, obviously playoffs is the target. But I think a lot of Sunderland fans have probably realised that with the last couple of results, it's not a question, but it might be a little bit of a stretch. So go into it with an open mind and see what happens, and you never know, it might just turn out right. But hopefully the pressure's off a little bit, because he's not gonna have it permanently, and that might actually work in our favour.
Yeah, I like that they've said that Dodds would take them to the end of the season. They've apparently learnt from their own mistakes, and they're not going to try and rush a 1 week, 2 week appointment. And obviously fans are not going to put pressure on them, because we expect Dodds to be in charge now. Ems, you wanted in?
Yeah, I've got a question for all of you. It's just something I'm wondering. Obviously, I've had this discussion before, a case of Beal in the dressing room. Could they appoint Dodds for the rest of the season because the players actually like Beal and get on with Beal and can play under him more than what they could? Sorry, could it be that they've appointed Dodds because the players actually get on with him and they can work under him, whereas they couldn't under Beal? What do you think about that side of it?
Jacob, do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, the the whole ethos behind the Beal appointment and the club were always going to potential, with the current model in place, go down the head coach type of route instead of a managerial route, someone who can come in and improve particularly the young players for them to be sold on eventually and taken up a level, and we make profit from that. But I think the club, it's just a big mistake they've made in terms of it. It was definitely a panic, I would say. He was definitely down the list, and I think they just felt that Dodds didn't have it. I think also it wasn't after Mowbray got sacked. That was after I think the club looked at it and thought, we want someone in because we know that we're going to be playing Newcastle in the Cup about a month later, because I'm pretty sure that tie was confirmed before Mowbray's sacking. And that's the way how they've looked at it and thought, right, because we're going to get stick here if we stick an interim manager in charge for that game, and we're going to get a huge battering from the supporters if we don't have a manager in place. That could be one of the big reasons why they've gone for basically a panic appointment. But yeah,
I think you're giving them too much credit. They didn't even think painting a bar black and white was going to be a bad thing. Terry, what?
That was the final nail in the coffin when it was going to go down.
Terry, what do you think of that? Do you think Dodds has got more of the dressing room than Beal ever had? Do you think the players can play better under him?
Oh, 100%. Let's face it. I mean, it's spot on there about the Black Cats bar. I mean, they're completely so adrift from the fans. It's unbelievable, these two. And in top here, like Speakman and KLD, just haven't got a clue about the fan base, I don't think. And I don't think, to be fair, in my opinion, I don't think Speakman gives a toss anyway, to be honest. But I think Dodds and Speakman are quite close. I think they've worked together before in the past. I think they sing off the same hymn sheet. I think Dodds is more of a people person than Beal, as we've seen. I don't think in a million month of Sundays, if that happened with Trey Hume, Dodds would have blanked Trey Hume. Dodds would have been straight, pat on the back, how are you, lads, hard line sort of thing, and then moved on with the game. So I don't think anybody would have done that. So I think you could see in the games, Dodds was in charge. The players kind of got on with them quite well, and they were quite friendly. So to the end of the season, but maybe it's giving them a bit of a leeway to get somebody in charge to the end of the season. But if somebody comes up between now and the end of the season, there's nothing saying they couldn't just suddenly put a statement out saying, right, we found somebody. Dodds is going to go back in as a sort of as a coach, and then this new person comes out for the last few games to sort of get to know the players, and he's not going to lose anything because the season will probably be over by then anyway. That's just my theory. But again, when is the season tickets going to be renewed again? When is all this? Because I know they were losing a lot of fans. If Beal had stayed at the end of the season, I know John Ruddick said this to me, I know if Beal stayed at the end of the season, how many fans wouldn't have got the season card out again, renewed the season card? Now that he's gone, a lot more people might be thinking in two minds, right, okay, we'll get a season card now. We've got Dodds at the end of the season, get a new one in, a new sort of head coach next season. So is it to do with money, do you think? Or do you think their hands were completely tied and they had to get rid of him with that sort of backlash of fans against Beal?
Yeah. What do you think, Jack, of the question that Ems posed there. Do you think Beal lost the dressing room, or do you think he ever had it in the first place?
I'm not sure they were ever fully behind him in the first place. I think, footballers get used to managers changing a lot, and you get the feeling of when a manager has the dressing room and when he doesn't. And I think Mowbray was genuinely liked by a lot of the Sunderland team. I think the fans liked him. He came across as quite warm, quite open and honest. And Beal, he just doesn't come across as a man with huge integrity to me. I always look at what the other teams think of him, and QPR fans didn't like him because he said he wasn't going to leave, and then he ended up going to Rangers. So that was, he categorically came out and says, "I'm not leaving QPR," and then he left about a few days later. So that didn't go down too well. Rangers fans weren't very complimentary of him, and actually, you look at how well Rangers are doing since he's gone. They were well behind Celtic at Christmas. It looks like their managers kicked them into top gear, and he's getting much more out of them than Beal ever did. Suddenly they're almost twice the team. So that's not really a ringing endorsement from Michael Beale's managerial career, is it? The fact that, QPR don't like him and Rangers are massively improved after he's gone. So yeah, I think that was it. I think Mowbray is very, very popular, and I think that probably didn't help Beal. He's coming in after a manager that a lot of the fans liked, a lot of the players were playing for. So that hasn't helped him. That's probably not ideal from his perspective, but he didn't help himself, did he? The comments that he made, the decisions that he made in terms of who he's playing and his substitutes, the results and the performances, you were scratching your head at, where are we going as a team? I can't think of one Sunderland player that's improved since he came in. Absolutely none really to me. So yeah, the important thing is now that we've realised the mistake, and hopefully, we use this time to get the right man in, and that might be something we'll come to later in the show who we're looking into. But there's no excuse now, is it? It's not like we're panicked now because we've got 3 or 4 months to have a real think and make the contacts that we need to get the right man in.
Yeah. Hold that thought, Jacob. I'm going to read a couple of comments just so I don't lose track completely. Tony Huntington says, Roy Hodgson stepping down at Crystal Palace. I hope it's only a coincidence. Wouldn't want him. Susan Beaumont said, we're outside noise. We didn't like his accent. He was paranoid. The Mad Mackham says, Keano would last 10 minutes. He'd smack Speakman in the chops and go out the back door. I quite like that one. We've got 323 people in here at the moment, which is amazing. If you could hit the like button, it'd be more than appreciated. We will try and get through as many comments as we possibly can. So we'll go on now. Sorry, Jacob, before I move on.
Forget about, what he said in his press conferences and whether the fans think he was the right fit for the club in terms of understanding the passion of the fan base, understanding what it means to be a manager of this club, particularly understanding the whole ethos of the support within the area. Forget about that. I'm the sort of fan that judges by results, and even before he got the job, his record was, if I'm brutally honest, it was absolutely rubbish. You look at what he did at Rangers fans, absolutely couldn't stand the sight of him because of the performances that after their previous appointment, when he got the job, he gradually made them worse and worse. I know before that he had a half decent run at QPR, but other than that, didn't really do anything there also to really turn their fortunes around last season. So yeah, I'm the fan that, the type of fan you look at what he's done previously and what you do as a man. I don't care, where you come from, what your nationality is, what your accent is. I'm not that type of supporter that is bothered about that. I judge purely on results and performances, and Beal was not the man for this club based on that.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll go back around the table. We'll start with you, Jack. Who's next? Is Dodds in with a shout of keeping the job if he has nothing but wins from now to the end of the season? Could you see him as a Premier League manager, or is Will still on the cards?
It's it's interesting, isn't it? I know what our fans are like. If something's going well and he starts picking up and getting good results and good performances, that there will be a clamour for him. But personally, I wouldn't go with Mike Dodds as well as. I mean, we don't know how well he's going to do. Firstly, but I think realistically, his value is more so somebody between maybe the management and the players, somebody that can use his skills as a coach, and hopefully, the new manager when he comes in the summer will still keep him as part of the backroom staff, because I still think he's got a value, but I don't think he'll get it permanently. I personally wouldn't get it permanently. Who would you be looking at? I mean, Will Still would be someone who'd be very exciting. I would be looking at somebody like that. Steve Cooper's a name that's been mentioned. I would be more than happy with him taking over. Whether or not he would work under that model, I don't know, but I think he would be a really interesting choice. I think he's got a great championship pedigree. Obviously did well with Nottingham Forest. Probably a little bit harsh to be sacked by them. I was looking at somebody like, and he's in a job at the minute doing really, really well and I love him, but somebody like Rob Edwards. If Rob Edwards goes down from Luton, could that be potential that he would fancy a job at Sunderland taking us up? Those are the options that I'm going for. One or two people. I think we're quite sentimental as a fan base, aren't we? There's people going to want Kevin Phillips back and Peter Reid back and Roy Keane back and people like that. But I don't think so. I don't think any of those. I'm a big fan. And look, if it worked the first time around, it's highly unlikely to work the second time around. So I think we've got to get our heads on. But that's what I mean about Speakman now. He can have no excuses the next time, because we've got a good 3 months now between now and May or June or whenever the new fella is appointed. So we need to be making the contacts now so that we get things in place and not make a panic decision like we made the last time, because obviously it didn't work that time and we've got plenty of time now. So we have to get this one right. And the new man needs to be in place, ready for sort of June, July when pre-season starts to kick right in. No waiting until this first game of the season, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. The only reason I'd have Peter Reid back in is not as a manager. He'd have a special job that was solely to do halftime team talks, and that is it. Terry, have you got your eyes on any potential managers? Obviously, Will Still's the obvious one because we were chasing him before, but there was a huge compensation package on the table. I don't know if that's gone by summer, but have you got your eye on anyone?
The problem is, isn't it, who's going to work under the current circumstances? Who's going to work with only the way they're doing it at the moment, with only getting kids in, with the hands tied, having no say. Who's going to work with that kind of, the likes of Graham Potter would be ideal for me, but he's never going to work with his hands tied in these circumstances. Like I said, Steve Cooper, like Jack said, again, another great candidate, but you can't see him coming in these circumstances. They're going to have to wait. They're going to have to change the model and change the way they run the club. They're going to have to sort of, in the olden days, yes, we had Lex of Rodwell, and we were way over one side with over the hill players, or players who were sort of prima donnas, thought they were, Premier League players, and then they've gone all the way to the other side now, where they've only got loads of kids, and we need to have a balance, man, a right balance in. Somebody who comes in, Speakman needs to take a back seat. He needs to only be out there scouting for young, talented players and bring them into the club, and that's it. That's where he stops. Then he hands them over to the head coach. The head coach then develops these kids, but he also has say and experienced players that come in, so we get the right balance. Speakman shouldn't be doing anything more than scouting for young talent, and that's it for me. Let the head coach come in and do more of a role, do a proper job. And then you've got the likes of Will Still. He wants to bring all his backroom staff in. He's not going to sit there and have no say and let someone like Speakman run the whole club. That's not going to happen. So there's going to have to be some sort of change in the model, otherwise we're going to be in exactly the same position this time next year.
Well said. Yep. Ems, before we come to you, I'll just introduce our guests to make it a 6 and even up this panel. It's Mr. James Copley, who's been on the channel before, from the Sunderland Echo, as well as up-and-coming YouTube sensation, approaching his 1,000 subscribers now, I believe, James. How's it going?
Yeah, very, very busy day, as I'm sure you can all imagine and sympathise with. It's been a bit of a crazy one. And it only feels like 5 minutes since the last time this happened, because it is only 5 minutes since the last time this happened, and Sunderland were without a permanent manager. So, yeah, fun times, but nice to be on the channel again. Thanks for having us.
No worries. Right, before we start picking James's brains, Ems, who's your choice for next manager? Do you have anyone in mind, or is it still the same candidates as before?
I'm kind of with Terry. Yes, I'd like to see Potter come in, but it's the case of, will he be able to manage under our club? Because we've had this conversation before, who's actually pulling the strings. So we then sort of go back to the revolving door situation, and then who wants to come to this club, who would play, who would manage under Speakman, who would take on the head coach role. I know we had that discussion earlier that obviously Michael Bowers was saying that there's more teams having head coaches rather than managers, but is this potentially why talks have broke down before we got Beal in, because these managers didn't want to come as a head coach and want to come as manager? Potentially. I mean, we've been linked with Gareth Ainsworth in the past. Where's he up to? What's he doing? Yes, I know he was Wickham and QPR. I don't know whether he's still a QPR, but to me, he's a League One manager, and I don't think he would be suited. But I'm trying to sort of think of who could potentially be in the pipeline, if that makes sense. But then again, it's who Speakman wants, in my opinion. It's nothing to do with KLD, it's Speakman. But then I think, on the other hand, that because of what's happened, they're going to want to try and please the fans as well. So I think they're going to be looking at fans' reactions over Beal departing the club and who the fans are saying could potentially be coming in for it.
Yeah, well, it's all a roll of the dice at the moment, isn't it? Jacob, have you got anyone in your sights that's not already been mentioned for potential manager?
It's difficult. It's really difficult now. I back the club, to give the job to. Well, it looks like they're going to do that. Give the job to Dodds until the end of the season, and I'm undecided of who they're going to go for. It could be someone that we have never even heard of before, who fits what the club were looking for, but someone who has a better record at getting the best out of young players compared to what Michael Beal had in his previous two jobs. Someone who's a young upcoming coach, and I think the club are going to have to be more reluctant this time at letting them bring their own staff in, because I think that's the reason why the likes of Hellberg and Still didn't get the job before.
Yeah, definitely. So just before I go, come to you, James. We've got 372 people watching. If you could all hit like, that'd be much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. SAFC Fan TV, bringing you exclusive news a day before everybody else. So we'll come to you, James. On that note, it must be a nightmare trying to decipher between what is people making up rumours on these social media platforms. At what stage do you decide to report that? Because obviously the club's statement came very late this time. So what was your insights on that?
Yeah, I'll talk you through the whole process. So obviously Sunderland lose against Birmingham, haven't lost against Huddersfield, and you're sort of thinking, my instinct was that this could happen pretty soon. But then you start to question yourself, and that wasn't really based on anything. And then I saw your guys' post, and I saw the rumours sort of flying around social media. And I don't mind telling you, and I apologise in advance, but I wasn't convinced. And that was without speaking to any of you. It's not a slight on any of you. I think you did marvellously to get the story. But I saw it initially and thought, I don't think it's going to happen just yet. And then I started work this morning. And everything was pretty quiet. I was then speaking to a few people, one of whom mentioned that Michael Beal hadn't taken training, which sent alarm bells ringing for me. But I knew that he was up in Scotland because I'd seen it on his Instagram story that he was with his niece Poppy, I think. So whilst I thought it was strange that he hadn't taken training, I did wonder if it was just some sort of planned time off with the club, whether it had been agreed to before. So me and my colleague Phil, we had a discussion. He did some more digging. I did some more digging. And then it came back that he was actually gone. So that story broke sort of afternoon time. And it sort of had to be phrased that, he was on his way out rather than he had gone, just because the club hadn't quite got round to announcing it yet. And then the announcement came from the club. So I think I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. I perhaps expected him to maybe last one or two more games, but I think Sunderland have probably done the right thing in acting decisively. I think he had to go for me. He didn't look to me at any point like a Sunderland manager or a Sunderland head coach. I wish him the best will in the world. I hope his niece Poppy makes a full recovery. I wish him and his family well. I hope that some of the abuse towards him stops. It's never nice to see a man sacked, lose his job, but it was never going to work. And in terms of the football, it was pretty dire. And I think giving it to Mike Dodds to the end of the season is the right call for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way you're speaking there sounds like he's definitely been fired. We were just discussing earlier that we weren't sure whether it was mutual, whether it was resignation due to all the stuff going on, or whether it's fired. Do you have any insights, or are you just speculating the same?
So mine, from the conversations that I had this morning, it sounded to me like he had been sacked, but I do think that he's been sacked after a conversation, if that makes sense. He's been relieved of his duties after after the two parties have spoken, basically laying it out on the line. I think Michael Beale's probably said that he's not enjoying it and he's unhappy and he's away from his family. And Sunderland have probably said, well, it's not working for us. There's X, Y, and Z and results. So whilst I think he has been sacked, I do think there's a little bit of dialogue in the middle. That's not me trying to cop out of giving you an answer there, by the way, but I just think that there's a little bit of a grey area. I think to all intents and purposes, he has been sacked, hasn't he? He hasn't... I don't think he's resigned or chosen to walk away, but I think he's been sacked after a conversation in which they've sat down and both acknowledged that it's not working.
Yeah, you've definitely got a career in politics with your...
oh, God, I hope not. I hope not.
Right. Ems, there's a question on here that's addressed to James, but we'll go around the table with it. I cannot find the actual thing. There it is now. And it's basically, was Will still ever a realistic option? He's constantly denied having contact with SAFC. So with that, as well as other managers, is it the money again? And is that going to be the same issue in summer? Or do you think because of this mistake and having to pay compensation, they'll actually loosen the purse strings for it?
I don't know, if I'm honest, because we don't know the ins and outs of what's happened with Beal in terms of the campo, how much we've had to pay him, things like that. And as you said, the thing will still, is that still in place come the summer? So I think before we really comment on that, we need to find out the ins and outs of, is Will still going to have that clause come the summer, or have we got Will still in our sights? Have we had that conversation with him before? And he said, no, it's up in the summer. Come the summer, I'm sort of like a free agent, if you like. So then could we be then going to make that move in the summer for Will still?
Yeah, well, the only thing that worries me with Will Still is having to say his name multiple times in streams. Will Still, Bill. Jack, what do you think? Do you think it's a realistic option? Or do you think we're still going to be penny pinching when it comes to assigning a head coach at the end of the season?
I think I do think that the issue with Will Still would have been outstanding in terms of the contract that he would have needed to be bought out of, and the backroom staff that I heard that he wanted and things like that. So, but he was definitely the number one target. I mean, the fact is, I think, James may know better than I do, but I think there was some contact at very least, even if it was just a conversation. But, and that's why when they came out afterwards and sort of bigged up Michael Beal as the number one choice, I thought, well, it can't have been. It took him 12 days to appoint, you know what I mean? So if it takes you 12 days to appoint a manager, that can't be right. That's your number one choice, because that just doesn't make sense whatsoever. I do think that we are being run more shrewdly, which is a good thing, but I do think there needs to be sometimes a bit more speculation when you're spending to accumulate, if that makes sense, whether that's appointing the right managerial candidate or whether or not that's bringing in the right player that's experienced. It's okay, as Terry mentioned, to have a model, and that's fine. Predominantly that's the route that you want to go down, but sooner or later you are going to have to take a chance, whether it's, sign somebody that's, 28, or, spend a bit more money, or, bring in somebody that's got a bigger contract that you might have to buy out in terms of managers. So I do think it'll be interesting to see the next appointment. Personally, it wouldn't surprise us if they went with a foreign manager, like someone maybe somebody that we haven't quite heard of so much, that they've got links to, that works under the model, that can come in and hopefully do well. That wouldn't surprise me too much if they went down that route, but we'll have to wait and see.
Terry, the mad mistake never pulls his punches when it comes to Speakman. Do you think he's going to open the wallet a bit and get us a decent coach? Do you think Will Still's a realistic possibility?
Well, like James has mentioned on his own YouTube channel, and he's really close to 1,000 subscribers, James Copley. So if you like what he says, pop over to the YouTube channel of James Copley and give him a subscription, because he's only about 30 odd away from 1K. So congratulations. Hope you get that soon. Like James says on his channel, it's KLD gives Speakman the money in the first place. So, you know, it's all linked together. I don't think Will Still will come to the club. That's just my personal opinion, to do with all the backroom staff, all the money that's going to be involved, unless they change the way they're doing things. I think they'll go for a young European head coach who probably will have no baggage, to be fair. But they're going to have to, I think personally, if they're going to try and be, you know, not end up in the same situation as we are now in 12 months' time, KLD's got to wake up and smell the roses and change something. He's got to. We've got to go for someone, for me, like maybe I don't know whether Graham Potter would come down to the Championship, whether Steve Cooper. I think them two, for me, are much more of a sort of a prospect than Will Still, in my opinion. But that's just my thoughts. But I think for us to get any of those, even Will Still, to get any of those names, it's going to have to be a big shift in what they're doing at the club at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Jacob, that's three very similar opinions there. Have you got anything to tack on to that? Have you got any thoughts on that? Will Still realistic, or is it going to be another who the hell is he manager?
For me, I think it will be, do I trust this board to make the right decision at this moment in time with everything poor that's gone on behind the scenes in recent months? Definitely not. As far as I'm concerned, you know, will they want to bring in a head coach who's got a promising team round him, never mind his coaching record, and have the nous as a club to back this head coach and his team to come together and improve the players? And will they basically just have the bottle to get the right person in, forgetting the financial situation behind it? And that was the reason, you know, why probably Still didn't get. I mean, it might not be fully true, but it looks like that was the reason why Still didn't get the job in the first place. But I can understand the point of, was he really linked in the first place? I personally think there were other managers in the frame, but they weren't. I don't know. It was all down to costs, why financially why they weren't appointed in the first place, and Beal was a cheap option. But I 100% agree. I think it will be someone that we have not known at all, but it will be a cheap option who comes in next.
Right. Well, I hope you're wrong.
I do as well, mate. I really do.
You're muted, Terry.
All the previous head coaches who have come to Sunderland under the likes of KLD and Speakman, have they all been out of contract elsewhere? I think none of them have had jobs, have they?
Yeah, they're all free agents.
That's another thing, though, isn't it? It's not just so much the money; it's the fact that if a manager's got a club at the minute, you have to negotiate with that club to get him out of the contract, don't you? You know what I mean? So you have to agree terms, and that can sometimes take time, because they're going to want the manager to stay, but they're going to want the best deal for their club, aren't they? So it's much easier. Might be cheaper as well, but it's also a lot easier halfway through the season to appoint a manager that's not in use, because there's no negotiations really other than between you and him. There's no negotiations needed between the club. I think that was partly why we panicked with Beal, particularly middle of December. You've got a heavy fixture list, Christmas and New Year, haven't you? You know, the games come thick and fast over Christmas and New Year. You're playing like something like 6 or 7 times in 15, 18 days. I think it was just, he's there, we'll get him in, hope for the best, and it wasn't thought through, and it's badly backfired.
Yeah. So the question originally was to you, addressed to you, James. I will shout out that it's one half of our channel famous Nesbitt brothers. It's Jim Nesbitt that asked it. So was Will Still ever a realistic option? He has consistently denied having contact with SAFC. Do you know of any contact? How legit is it?
I think the link was definitely legit, and I think there were some approaches from Sunderland made, whether they were to Will Still directly or whether they were to his club or to his agent. I'm not convinced, but there's a reason it took them so long to appoint Michael Beal, and that was because they were flirting with Will Still pretty heavily, in my opinion. No smoke without fire. It reminded me a lot of what happened with Roy Keane before Alex Neil was appointed. So I think there was definitely something in it. They clearly rated him as a coach. And I actually think that's where the problem started for Michael Beal, really, is that Sunderland fans thought they were getting one thing and they ended up getting another entirely different thing, which set him off on the wrong foot. And I think Sunderland fans expected a sort of an upgrade on Tony Mowbray, and Michael Beal certainly wasn't that. Will we go back in for Will Still? I'm not entirely convinced. I don't know. I find this sort of next 6 months really hard to predict, because I think what a lot of people are missing is what happens if Mike Dodds does a really, really superb job and you're then facing a tough decision. Do you give him the job at the end of the season if he's done well? You know, sort of like Ricky Sprazier type situation. I don't know. Could that happen? The thing is with Mike Dodds is if you give him the job, then you have to sack him at some point as well, or he gets poached if he does really, really well. And is that something Sunderland want to do? Because Mike Dodds is an integral part of the coaching staff, and he's very well liked. He's somebody they want to retain. So I think this throws up a lot of problems, and I think it's really tough to say. It's really tough to predict where Sunderland will be in this manager hunt in sort of 4 to 6 months' time. Really hard.
James,
Jacob,
can I ask a couple of quick questions, mate? Going off that Will Still.
You go first, mate.
That quick question with Will Still there. So how far down the pecking order do you think Beal was?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I think Will Still was probably the favourite. And then there was the talks of Hellberg and Sable, wasn't there? I'm not sure how far down the line those talks got, whether there was any talks. I think you've all sort of hit the nail on the head, really, in terms of Michael Beal was out of work. And if there's one characteristic of this Sunderland ownership, is that they don't actually want to pay compensation for managers because they feel it's not worth it, because usually you have to sack them. So why would you sort of pay to get one out of the contract when there's the free agent market? And, you know, the flip side to that is it worked with Alex Neil and it worked with Tony Mowbray, but it didn't work with Michael Beal. And I think that the longer that continues, the longer it feeds into this narrative of the club doing certain things on the cheap, which I think is fair.
Do you think also then Christian Speakman says it was his first choice? So if what you're saying is your belief that, like, you must think the same as me, that Speakman must be lying about it being his first choice.
I think, and this is pure speculation, and I heard somebody on the show say it earlier, but I do wonder. I think the point that was made on the show earlier was that, you know, Speakman's in full control of the manager situation. It has nothing to do with Kira Louis-Dreyfus. I wonder whether Kira Louis-Dreyfus actually has quite a big say, and it's not 100% down to Speakman. And sometimes that can lead to a little bit of a fracture in approach when it comes to hiring Sunderland's managers. I think, to go back to it, I think we saw that with the Roy Keane flirtation. I don't think that Roy Keane is a manager that Christian Speakman would probably consider, but I think that Juan Sartori and Kira Louis-Dreyfus liked the idea of it and pursued it. And it wouldn't surprise me with Kira Louis-Dreyfus's French connections that was something that he maybe pushed for, and that Michael Beal ended up being Speakman's first choice because he was perhaps all along, but there was still this little flirtation with Will Still, which was probably came from Kira Louis-Dreyfus. I think it's tough to say, and it's not based on anything other than a hunch. But I do wonder if that is the case, because at the end of the day, football clubs are at the whim of the owner, really, and Speakman answers to Kira Louis-Dreyfus at the end of the day. So the Tony Mowbray sacking, was that 100% a Speakman decision? I don't know, because Kira Louis-Dreyfus have had a hand in it, possibly. But the buck stops with Speakman, really, in terms of these decisions, because that falls under his job title. So, as ever with anything at Sunderland, it's deeply complex.
This is why you're a journalist and I'm not, because that answer's superb. Because, I mean, you're saying that Kildee may have had choices, he got his choices in, but Speakman might have said, I wanted Beal all along. So, yeah, we'll never know.
I mean, it's like to simplify it right down, it could be like it could be like the 6 contributors on this podcast all have a different idea, and they all pursue that one idea for 20 minutes, but then we end up doing what Jacob wants. It can be stuff like that. It's not cut and dry, but the problem is that we don't get to see the process or be in the rooms with the people when they're making the decisions. So while we can't get a seat at the table, we'll always speculate, won't we? Which is where these narratives tend to come from.
Fair comment. Good answer. Thanks.
Jacob, if you've still got your thought.
Yeah. James might agree with me on this. It takes me back to the summer also when David Moyes left, and the club were, their first choice at the time was looking at, was it Derek McGuinness, who did a decent job at Aberdeen?
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and was it a case he looked at the model and the future plans in terms of recruitment and the financial situation the club at the time had in place, and he thought, nah, definitely not. And Grayson was only appointed because it was a cheap option. He was easily affordable to get him out of Preston North End at the time. The situation sort of reminds me a little bit of that, the way how they appointed Michael Beal. I mean, we never know, Still might have turned down the job even after he was offered it, purely on the fact that he wasn't impressed with the plans the club had in place in terms of recruitment.
No, I think that's a good comparison, one that I hadn't actually considered myself. And like, I do sort of get what the club are doing, in a sense that maybe it doesn't make a great deal of business sense to pay a lot of money for a head coach when there is a good chance that you have to sack them. More often than not, you have to sack them. But there's also the flip side of that argument, is that sometimes you get what you paid for. And this doesn't apply to every out of work manager, but by and large, the out of work managers are out of work mid-season because they've messed up in the last job, which is just sort of the way the cookie crumbles.
Did you want in there?
Yeah, just on the back of that, it was it Alex Neil? I can't quite remember, where it was a 1-year contract and it was rolling afterwards. Why didn't we do that with Beal this time, where it was a rolling contract? Do you know what I mean? If it's something we've done before, by not having that rolling contract, effectively, it's cost more money.
No, it's an excellent point, because I think everybody's eyebrows were raised, weren't they, when that 2.5 year contract was sort of released to the public, and we all saw that written down in black and white. And what I've just mentioned there, and off the back of M's point, is that yes, Sunderland haven't paid money to get Michael Beal out of a club anywhere, but they will have had to pay him compensation, which sort of defeats the object of not paying the money in the first place, doesn't it? So they've sort of probably shot themselves in the foot. But yeah, I think, again, it does feed into this narrative that the club do certain things on the cheap. Obviously, there's the commercial side of things. There was the cash grab with the Black Cats bar, the whole furore surrounding the Newcastle United game. I'm actually largely in favour of, signing young players and developing young players. I just think it's gone too far the other way, where there's virtually no experience at the club, which is a massive problem. I mean, Pritchard, Gooch and Bath, I think, could all have contributed this season and would have helped Sunderland. And I think you see that in the inconsistencies in the performances. We can't even string 45 minutes together without dropping off, and we certainly can't string a full game together at the moment. And I do genuinely think that's down to some inexperience. So it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because Kirill Louis-Dreyfus, Christian Speakman, they've clearly progressed the club, haven't they? They've found the club in League One. They've got some excellent players at the club. They've appointed some excellent head coaches. And then this season, it's gone wrong, hasn't it? Really, let's face it. And I know Sunderland are 9th or 10th in the land, saying be careful what we wish for. But we can see when something isn't quite right, and it just doesn't feel as if it's quite right at the moment. And it just feels like perhaps it's slid too much towards something it shouldn't be, if that makes sense. And it just needs the parameters sort of re-evaluating a little bit. And I don't think anybody would complain at that. But I mean, the last sort of transfer window, Sunderland seemed to double down on the strategy, didn't they? They signed more young players and sold more old ones. So really interesting times, and it makes for a really interesting summer as well.
Jack, you wanted in on the back of that?
Yeah, I was just going to sort of add on to what James was saying about the fact that this is the model we've gone from one extreme to the other. Where a few years ago was signing sort of players that were 30 plus and giving them big deals and ending up working out, how we're going to get rid of these, and players that, had no resale value, no real future in the game, and we're giving them one last payday, particularly towards the end of the David Moyes era. And now within a few years, we've suddenly gone from one extreme to the other. Now we're not signing anybody above 25. And I think that the key is balance. But I think to a certain extent, this is going to sound strange and fans are probably not going to like this, but I think us getting in the playoffs and losing in the playoffs is probably not a good thing for the future football club, because now it raised expectations. And that should always be the target, don't get us wrong, but I think it means that we're closer than we maybe think to getting to where we want to be. And now the expectation goes up and fans become a little bit more impatient and they want everything. And I'm not blaming the fans, because I think, but the point I'm making is I think sometimes it can be a bad thing if you do have a little bit of success, because suddenly, the rewards are in front of you. And if you don't get there, then it's suddenly, well, why aren't we there again? You know what I mean? And it doesn't look at the overall picture, maybe.
Actually, I think you have to be really careful with Sunderland if you are Christian Speakman, Kirill Dreyfus, because we have some extremely talented footballers at this club, some young talented footballers: Trey Hume, Dennis Serkin, Adji Elisi when they're fit, Anthony Patterson, Dan Neil, Pierre Ekwa, Jack Clark, Patrick Roberts. Last season we had Ahmad, Ross Stewart was hanging around. We also had Ellis Sims for a period of time. And you have to be very careful not to squander some extremely talented players in an extremely talented group just because you're a little bit too stubborn to put your hand in your pocket. Add more to it. Give the squad what it needs to flesh it out to become promotion contenders. Otherwise, you run the risk in 5 years or 10 years, you look back and you think, bloody hell, all of those good players that we had at the club and we didn't get promoted. And Trey Hume might be at, Brentford in the Premier League. Jack Clark might be at West Ham. Dan Neil might be at Manchester United, Pierre Ekwa might be at Chelsea or something like that. And suddenly you're looking back thinking, why on earth didn't we push with that squad? And I think Sunderland are in danger. They're at a crossroads now of that happening, which is, is tough to take for Sunderland fans, because we've really enjoyed watching this team. And I think they do give us a lot, barring the Michael Beal era, of course. I mean, last season was absolutely fantastic, some of the football and the enjoyment. And I think we just need to recapture that enjoyment, I think, is key.
I'm constantly saying that to people. Some of the players that we've had on paper is unreal, that we've not done better than we actually have. Terry, I want to come to you for a second. Just on the whole, how this has come about. How much of you, if anything, do you think this is fan power? I mean, because obviously Beal was getting a lot of stick. Some of it was justified and it was aimed at him as a manager. Some of it was unjustified and it was personal attacks. But either way, there's a lot of fan influence. Do you think that's pushed the board to do this quicker than they would have done before?
If they have sacked them 100%, then yeah, I think it is. I think they have. I mean, let's face it. I mean, Kirill Dreyfus made his first appearance on Sunderland Till I Die season 3, and he talked about his history, and he kind of comes across as a likeable fella. And I think he wants to sort of be more out there for the Sunderland fan base to sort of so to go along with what he's doing. So as soon as you can see the majority of the fans on social media, because I mean, obviously we don't know what the majority of fans actually think, that are against Beal, and everyone's spouting the mouths off saying that the results are not good, we've gone backwards, why did they sack Tony Mowbray, the player. I mean, look at the game on Saturday. We wouldn't have scored in a month of Sundays if Birmingham didn't give us a goal. We couldn't score against Huddersfield. Where's the flashy performances gone? We said everyone's gone back into the shell. The formation doesn't seem right. It's just unbalanced in the team. Everybody's complaining about everything, so they've got to make a stand somewhere. Or, like I said before, when it comes time to renew your season tickets or season cards, and everyone's upset because Beale's there as a long-term manager. And I know loads of people who said they weren't going to renew the season card next season because of simple things like the way the model's going, why we're not spending any money, where we've got Beal in charge. So to address that a little bit, they've got to do something. They've got to make a stand, and it was time now to do it before it was too late. So with 14 games to go, at least you give Dodds a little bit of a chance to come in and maybe put his stamp on it and try it. We are only 4 points off the playoffs. There's still a chance of us getting there. There's plenty of points to play for. And the way it was going with Beal, we were never going to do that. The players don't look happy coming off the bus. They look miserable. That thing with Trey Hume, that's only going to make a whole division in the side as well. The players are not going to be happy with that. I don't think that Trey Hume and Beal would ever get over that personally. So I think there's too much going on to keep Beal at the club. So he had to go, and that's the only way they're going to get the fans kind of back on the side of KLD a little bit.
Yeah. James, do you want to quickly answer? Because I know you've got to shoot off. So do you want to answer the question of fan power, how much influence that has on the club? How much do you think it's affected this decision?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to go full politician again, if you don't mind. And I do genuinely believe this. I'm not just saying this, but I think it's a combination of factors. I think fan power is definitely one of them. I think Michael Beal would have struggled to get Sunderland fans on side ever. I think even if he did win his next 3, the moment that Sunderland's form dipped again, all of this would have come right back to the surface. So it would have just been a sort of revolving door of negativity. So it would have been pointless from that regard. So fans always have a voice, always have an impact. I think, Terry mentioned the players. I think that will have had a serious impact as well. If they're not convinced, if that group's not convinced, if they've been asked about it, if they've been asked about Michael Beal and they're not convinced, that'll have played a part. And I just think, results as well, massive. And there'll be people at the academy of looking at it thinking, the atmosphere, the feel of it, it isn't right. I mean, if we can feel it at home, if we can feel that something's not right without being day to day, Speakman and Kira Louis-Dreyfus must be able to see it and feel it. But it's crazy and it's mad. I mean, I think it's 2 months and 1 day since Michael Beal was appointed, and I was at his first press conference. Speakman spoke as well, and he said it was, some of the best coaching sessions he's ever seen. And now we're at this 2 months and a day later where he's been sacked after, 12 or 13 games, which is the shortest tenure of any permanent Sunderland manager ever, apart from Niall Quinn, who effectively appointed himself and then sacked himself. So you can't really consider him. So it's crazy. It's a bizarre episode in the club's history. You have to say credit to the club for acknowledging that they've made the mistake, but the problem lies with the club making the mistake in the first place. So, yeah, I'm intrigued to see where we go from here, really intrigued, because I could see it going a multitude of ways. I could see it going very well, or I could see it being an absolute car crash.
Indeed. Well, with that, I know you've got to shoot, so I'll say thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on the channel, and good luck. Hopefully, by the end of this one, you've hit 1,000. Don't forget, go over to James's channel and give him a subscribe. Do you want to give him the channel name?
Yeah, so you can find all of my work over at the sunderlandecho.website.com. We're all over social media, and then I do my own YouTube channel on the side, which is at @JamesCopley_. Terry's been kind enough to boost my algorithm with a couple of comments from his monster YouTube channel, so hopefully we'll get there soon.
Excellent. Right, thank you, James.
Cheers, guys. See you later.
Right. So, on the fan power, Ems, you've been on a one-woman campaign against Beal since he came in, I believe, since his name was uttered. So, how much influence did you have on KLD personally? What's going on?
Truth be, I went down the stadium yesterday and I threatened to ambush the club.
Wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise me if I did it, to be fair, but that's another story. But no, in all seriousness, I think that KLD has actually had to stand up and listen to the fans on this one. But as I said earlier, when it was just me and you, Mike, I think the big part of this has been the way Tony Mowbray departed the club. So the way he's departed the club, not many fans wanted him to go, so already that got their back up straight away about Beal. So would he have ever won the fans round? I'm thinking, if you got with the playoffs, we've got the playoff final, we won, we got promoted, would the fans turn and be on side? I'm not sure. But I honestly think that the club have now stood up and listened to what the fans are saying and thinking, hang on a minute, we've screwed up here. We need to do something.
Yeah, definitely. Jacob, do you agree with that? Did the fans have something to say on the matter? Do they have to appease them?
I think that's the case.
Are we just outside noise?
I think the case for a lot of sackings you see in football today. I remember, do you remember when Southampton sacked Nathan Jones last season? like midway, they went through about 3 managers. I think he lasted the same amount of games as what Beal did for us, and that was all to do with stuff going on behind the scenes. The fans didn't like the whole the language he was using in his press conferences. Obviously, performances were not great as well. It was clear that the players weren't playing for him at the time, and it's sort of similar to the situation. I know they were obviously in the Premier League, but at the same time, there are other examples like that. It's if you lose a fan base early on, it's very, very hard to win those fans back over unless it's something remarkable in terms of results and performances on the pitch. And it was just completely doomed for Michael. But I think the performance, you could argue, if we didn't have a Tyne and Weir derby and the way how we performed that day, could he have potentially been in the job longer than what he is now? Possibly, but it's only a small possibility. Aside that game, other results have been poor as well. And there's clearly, I think, things that have gone on behind the scenes that's contributed to this sacking as well.
Yeah. Right. We will be signing off soon because it was supposed to be an hour. I think we've ran over already. I'm going to go around the table with a quick fire mind. Everyone paying attention. Quick fire. Who is your favourite for the replacement manager, and where's Sunderland's finishing position this season with all this that's gone on? What's your guesses, Jack?
My favourite, or who do I personally think? I personally would go for somebody like Steve Cooper, but I have a feeling that the Sunderland board might go for him. So I think they might go with an up-and-coming foreign coach who, I don't know, Lucien Favre's name's been mentioned in the chat, or whether or not it ends up being Will Still, I don't know, but I think they're more likely to go down that route. And what was the other question? Where are we going to finish in the league?
Yeah.
I hate to sound like a broken record because I've said it pretty much a lot of the season, but I just can't see us quite getting into the playoffs. I think this championship is slightly stronger in depth than it was last season. And we haven't got the Amad Diallo factor towards the end of the season. We might get momentum, but I don't think we're going to get anything like the momentum we got towards last season. So I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to get in the playoffs. I think we will be in the top half, though. I can't see many teams being above us in the top half. So I think maybe something like 9th, 10th, where we are now, I think is probably where we're going to finish. But I hope I'm wrong. I'll be the first to hold my hands up and admit if we're wrong, if we do sneak into the playoffs. But I just think we're not quite there yet. I don't think we're far away, but not quite.
Okay. Terry, quick fire for you. Where are we going to finish, and who's your favourite?
My favourite, who I'd want him, would probably be Graham Potter and or Steve Cooper, and we're going to finish either 6th or 7th.
Ooh, possible playoffs then. Jacob, same question.
I agree with Terry. I think the likes of Potter and Cooper would be good shouts, but I don't think the club will do that. I think they'll wait till the summer to appoint a young upcoming foreign coach that we've never heard of before. In terms of where we're going to finish, I do agree with Jack. I think based on performances and results and the squad being weaker and the league obviously being stronger than what it was last season, and obviously the squad being weaker as well, I would say in and around where we are now, but I'd say probably either 8th or 9th, I'd say is where we're going to end up.
Okay, so similar to Jack then. Ems, who's your favourite for manager, and where are we going to finish?
First off, you said one quick question. That's 2 quick questions. So I reckon that we're going to finish, I'm going to say 7th. We're just going to miss out on the playoffs. And I would like Potter to come in, but I kind of agree with Jack. It's going to be some foreign upcoming manager we've never heard of. But I have got a name in my head that I'm thinking, just out of pure daftness, why don't we bring Stephen Sports in? Because he's got his coaching badges. He's never managed a team yet, I don't think. Just out of daftness. I'll throw that name out there.
Has he still got a space clause in his contract?
That's it. Where did I get the moon from? That's what I meant, the space clause. Oh.
Yeah.
Just a bad name, chuck it out there.
Well, indeed. Personally, for me, I think Will Still's been on the cards since before Beal, during Beal, and after Beal. I think they're going to do everything to try and get him in at the end. I don't know if that means they're going to have to bend the model slightly. And I think we'll finish 6th at least. I think we're going to hit the playoffs. I don't think we might get to the playoff finals, but I don't think we're going to get promoted. But I do think we'll hit the playoffs. That's my. There's 343 people in. Amazing. Thank you for staying with us for this long. Hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. In all our videos, there's links to everybody in the panel's social medias. Go and follow them, subscribe to them, depending on what they've got. Tweet them. It doesn't matter. Just go and find, support everyone on the channel. It's much appreciated. Jack, would you like to say your goodbyes?
Yeah, thanks for everyone for tuning in. Really interesting show tonight. There's always something to talk about Sunderland, but thanks everyone for watching, because as I always say, we'd just be 5 or 6 people talking ourselves if the people didn't interact. We wouldn't really have a show without the people commenting. So thanks, and I'll see everybody later, lads and lasses.
Terry?
Again, thank you everybody for watching. Thanks to the panel. And if you like Mike's face over there, he's got his own YouTube channel called Black Cats Nation. Pop over, subscribe. He's got some interesting videos on it.
Thank you, Terry. Jacob?
As I always say, we're Sunderland until we die. Keep the faith for the rest of the season. I hope you're right, Mike, about us finishing in the top 6. I personally think it's unlikely, but you just never know.
We can only keep the faith. Ems?
Yep, I'll see everybody later. And it's onwards and upwards now that Beal's gone. Fingers crossed.
And from me, appreciate it, and I'll see you all probably in the next video.